Okay, let me review real quick. First of all, we talked about, in number 1, we talked about the Trinity of God, Father, Son, / Word, and Holy Spirit. The second part of the study was the Trinity of man, who is a spirit with a soul, i.e. a mind, will, and emotions inside a flesh body. The third study was the fall in chapter 3 of Genesis. And the two things that I want to make sure that you take away from that is the root of the original sin was wanting to be God on the part of Adam and Eve. And the second thing is what Daddy told Satan. Her seed is going to crush your head, i.e. take your authority. So from that point on, Satan's looking for some guy to take the authority that he took away from Adam. Okay? The next thing I want to hit a few things here real quick, and they'll actually draw a line. The next thing I want to talk about is the flood in Genesis chapter 6. Now, I have to watch how I say this. Okay? When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful and they married any of them that they chose. Okay, we have daughters of men and sons of God. The difference is that the sons of God are angelic beings. But these particular angelic beings are marrying the daughters of men. Now, if they're angelic beings and they're marrying the daughters of men, guess what type of angel they are? Anybody? No, that's who they produced. Yes. Okay? These are demons because they're doing something that is not in their place to do. If you read Jude, he talks about angels that have left their place and that they have a special condemnation for them. All right? Now, you can check that out for yourself. That's in Jude. Okay? Now, so what happened is this. Demons were marrying the daughters of men, females, women, girls. Okay? Now, I'm going to try to watch how I say this. If Daddy don't stop this, there won't be a virgin left to have Jesus. Everybody picking up what I'm putting down there? You can believe that or not. But this, when he talks about 5, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Guess what everybody was thinking about doing? Everybody was thinking about doing all the time. Don't say it. You know what I'm talking about. Only evil all the time. If Daddy don't put a stop to this, there's nobody to have Jesus. You picking up what I'm putting down? Now, there was only one righteous dude, and Daddy saved him and his family. If Daddy waits any longer, his family gets compromised too. All right, so we got that. The next thing I want to hit on is chapter 11, Tower of Babel. Randy? I just want to hit this thought real quick because I want everybody to remember this and think about this. Are you ready to read verse 6? Go ahead. All right, the phrase I want to point out to you is, nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. I want you guys to get this into your heads. Me and Bill were talking about this before we even started, okay? As a child of God, see yourself as who you're supposed to be, not right where you are, and you will become who you're supposed to be. All you have to do is first imagine it and then it can become your reality. But if you won't first imagine it, it can't become your reality. If you see who yourself as who you used to be before you were in Christ, you'll stay there. Hey, check it out. Another thing me and Bill were talking about. The Tony Robbinsons and Oprahs and all of them, and Joel Osteen, all the self-help people, they got locked into this. They'll all tell you to see yourself first before you can be that success. The prosperity gospel is based on that. That's the foundational verse of the prosperity gospel. They want you to see yourself rich so you can pay them. You know. But the rest of us, we won't see ourselves as who Daddy wants us to be. Just a little something for everybody to chew on. That's not so critically important in the line of succession that I'm trying to draw through this thing, but it's something I wanted to hit on, and it's in Genesis. Now, after this, the important things that I want to hit on are the covenants. The first covenant is about a nation and a land. And that starts in Genesis chapter 12 with Abraham. Now, if you know that about Abraham, he came from a place called Ur of the Chaldeans. Okay? And Ur of the Chaldeans is in southeastern Iraq. And Daddy's plan is to make Abraham the father of what will become the Jewish nation. So I want you to think about this for a second. The father of the Jewish nation was an Iraqi. Think about that in terms of today. The father of the Jewish nation is an Iraqi. Well, 12:1. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. 2, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." Daddy's going to bless Abraham, and Abraham's going to turn around and be a blessing. "I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." How will all peoples on earth be blessed by this Iraqi dude? That's right. Jesus is coming from this guy. Let's go to 13:15. Okay, we'll start at 14. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, "Look around from where you are, to the north, to the south, to the east, and to the west. All the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever." Okay? That's the land. I'm going somewhere with this, trust me. 15:5 and 6. Daddy took Abraham outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Then Daddy said to Abraham, "So shall your offspring be." In other words, your family is going to explode and be as many people as there are stars in the sky. Go ahead, Abe, try to count them. The end of the road here for this line of thinking and understanding is Jesus. Before we can get to Jesus, we need a place for him to be and a people for him to come from. That's Abraham. Abraham gets the land and becomes the father of the people. If this seed of Eve is going to do what Daddy wants him to do, he has to come from some people and live somewhere. Does that make any sense? Well, Daddy set up a special place for this guy to come from and a certain people who will be his people to come from. I mean, he didn't just go to an Eskimo and say, "You know what I think you could do for Jesus? Do this." Okay? He had to set it up prior to that. And the first thing that Daddy set up was a place and a people. Now, back in chapter 6 of Genesis, everybody's evil all the time, thinking and doing evil. We got a problem here. Well, look, I'm going through Israel's history and jumping over a whole bunch of things for a reason. The next covenant. So Daddy makes let me back up. Daddy makes a covenant with Abraham. His name is Abram. 6. Abram believed the Lord, and Daddy credited to Abraham as righteousness. This is very important. Some people will say, well, how did people get saved before Jesus? Salvation is simply believing Daddy, and he credits it to you as righteousness. Now, the righteousness we get comes from Jesus' sacrifice, but it's still believing. It starts with believing and getting credited as righteousness. Does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions about righteousness? Righteousness is simply believing Daddy. Noah believed Daddy and built a boat. 120 years after he started building the boat, in the middle of where there was no water and it had not yet rained, well, Abraham's belief in Daddy became sight when it started to rain and the flood happened. Okay? Abram did the same thing. Daddy said, go and do this. Abraham believed Daddy and then did what Daddy said to do. So we've got the land, we've got the people. The next thing we need is, unfortunately, the law. Now, we could study Old Testament law from now until the time Jesus comes back. Let me hit on a few things. First thing is, in Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments. Okay? I am the Lord your God, brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything, etc., etc. And I'm not trying to diminish the 10 Commandments. For the sake of time, you guys all know where the 10 Commandments are. You can read them for yourself. In addition to the 10 Commandments, he sets up a sacrificial system through Moses and rules for sacrifice. Okay? A lot of that stuff is in Leviticus. If you do this, get this. Bring this to the priest, he'll do that. If you do that, do this, do this. Bunch of rules, a law, a set of laws to deal with sin. But it never permanently dealt with sin. Okay? Now, Moses brings the covenant of the law to the people in a land. Even though they're not yet in the land because they're on their way, he sets up the law before they get into the land to occupy it. He needs a lawful people to go into the land. Think about that for a second. The law is given out in the desert, and then they go into the land. Exodus 34. Told you I was going to go fast. I didn't lie. Exodus 34, 5 and 7 is a confirmation of the covenant. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and stood there with Moses and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sins of the parents to the third and fourth generation. That's a confirmation between Daddy and Moses of the covenant. And at this time, it's the second set of tablets. Oh, who wrote on the tablets? Okay, cool. Moses didn't do this. Daddy did. Read. Don't believe me? Read. Now, and this is even important today. Deuteronomy 28, blessings and cursings. There are people who will talk to you about grace, and I'm cool with grace, but grace doesn't erase this. Okay? And I won't move from that. Deuteronomy 28 is all the blessings and the cursings. We'll look at 1 and 2 real quick. 28. There it is. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on the earth. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. After that, there's a whole list of blessings, okay? Now, after that, there's a whole list of cursings. If you don't obey the curses, if you do obey the blessings and cursings are tied to the law, okay? But they're tied to the law for a nation. While an individual within a nation can experience grace, if he or she is truly in Christ, the nation as a whole will experience the blessings and the cursings. Remember what he said to Abram. I will bless those who bless thee and curse those who curse thee. Because the nation of Israel starts with Abram, those blessings and cursings fall on whoever blesses or curses the nation of Israel. Anybody want to guess about anybody who's cursing the nation of Israel today and is bringing a curse on themselves because of it? Ooh, somebody's paying attention. The children of God within the nation of America are still under grace, but the nation itself is now operating under a curse because the government is cursing the government of Israel. I won't be moved from that. I don't care what happens. That's what this says. You see, it don't just change. It's in Genesis, it's in Leviticus, it's in Deuteronomy. It doesn't just wash away. Grace, salvation is for people, but for lands, for nations, there's still the blessing and cursing law. Okay, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get political too much. The other one I want, Deuteronomy 30:19. This is a very important verse. This is Daddy talking. This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you that I, Daddy, have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live. That don't change. You know what Jesus' blood does, amongst other things? It makes it possible for us to choose life. Because in and of ourselves, Randy, me, come on, me, I'll choose death. I'll choose to do things to curse myself. Okay, so here's what we got so far. We have a land. We have people in the land, okay, who are taken out and separated from everybody else and dropped into a spot which is lush with produce and is able to sustain vegetation and cattle, and it's well watered. This is a land where these people can go into and live well. They have a law that they're supposed to follow. All right. We know, if we've read the history of the nation of Israel, from the time they enter into the land under Joshua till, well, we're going to get to David in a second, but until David, look, they go back and forth, following God and not following God, okay? Don't follow God. Catastrophe comes. Repent. Follow God. It's cool for a while. Next generation, don't follow God. Catastrophe comes, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And that's the general theme of the history of the nation of Israel. Okay? Land, people, law. Well, we're still not ready for this guy who's going to be Eve's seed. Because we got a land, we got a people, and we got a law. Well, where's this dude? Where's this dude that's going to take Satan's authority? Would he not be a king if he could take Satan's authority? Can we not see that he would be a king? Let's jump all the way up to 2 Samuel chapter 7. Prior to David, there is King Saul. Saul messed up, in brief. So he lost the kingship, once again, in brief, to David. All right? So David, at this point, has become king. And in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 8, Daddy says this, "Now then, tell my servant David, this is what the Lord Almighty said. I took you from the pasture, from tending the flock, and appointed you ruler over my people Israel." "I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have cut off all your enemies from before you." I have cut off all your enemies from before you. Now I will make your name great like the names of the greatest men on earth. And I will provide a place for my people Israel and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. Wicked people will not oppress them anymore, as they did at the beginning and have done ever since the time I appointed leaders over my people Israel. I will also give you rest from your enemies. The Lord declares to you that the Lord himself will establish a house for you. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that he's given him a place to live, a mansion or something. In Old Testament times, the house was the lineage. It was the family. It was the father and the son and the grandson and the great-grandson and on and on. When your days are over and you rest with your ancestors, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you. Your own flesh and blood I will establish his kingdom. He is the one who will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Who's he talking to David about? How about David's kid? Who's David's kid? Who? Solomon. David doesn't build the temple. Solomon does. I will be his father, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will punish him with the rod wielded by men, with floggings inflicted by human hands. But my love will never be taken away from him as I took it away from Saul. Now that's a whole other teaching. It could be understood that this could have happened through Saul, but Saul blew it. Here we go, 16. Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. That makes Jesus possible. He sets up the line of the kingdom forever. There is a period of time after the split between Israel and the tribe of Judah, and then there's a divided kingdom, and there's two sets of kings. But the kings of Judah come from David, okay? And then that kingdom appears to fall away. And then there's a period of a few hundred years where nothing seems to happen. And then Jesus shows up. Okay? Now, because the Israelites remembered that there was supposed to be always a king, they were looking for a dude to come in and be the king again. They had kings, but they were appointed kings. When the Babylonians come in and took over, they appointed dudes king. When the Assyrians come in and took over, they appointed dudes king. When the Mesopotamians came, they appointed kings. The Greeks appointed kings. And in the time of Jesus, the Romans appointed kings. But they weren't from David's line. They weren't from the bloodline of David. And Daddy tells David, your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever. You see, even though there wasn't an actual dude sitting on an actual throne in the flesh, the king was already there. Because of what Daddy said back in Genesis chapter 3. Her seed is going to take your authority, crush your head. Those were the words that came out of Daddy's mouth, and they would later become the person of Jesus. Jesus was already there from the time Daddy set it in motion. He just wasn't there in the flesh. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? See, these are the kind of things that you have to take them on faith. And I know that's a blanket statement, and it can be misapplied and abused. But Jesus was already there. Jesus was there before even David, because he was Daddy's word. He just had not yet become a man. So here's what Daddy did. He picked out some land, put a people in it, established a law, and established a line of people to be kings, so that he could put that seed where he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted. And why is this law important? Well, this law governs everything that the people of Israel would do, but they couldn't keep the law. He had to bring somebody in who, in addition to being the king, would be able to keep the law in its fullest. Now, there's a whole bunch of facets, things about Jesus that could be learned. In fact, you remember how I said we could study the law? Well, we could study Jesus until he comes back, and maybe that's what we really should be doing. But I'm going to talk about some of the main points to understand about Jesus. Remember, the point of this is to understand the line of succession so that you have an understanding of how we get from Genesis chapter 1 all the way up to the Gospels. We understand why is the Old Testament important. It must mean something. It's 2/3 of almost 3/4 of the book. I mean, it's not just filler. Oh, I just remembered what these are for. You know, when we lose the power and all that, we can use these pages to light fires, right? Is that what this is for? I mean, if all those pages are there's a reason why we're supposed to be reading that. Come on. Ooh. All right, sister. Anybody know what she's talking about? Let me put it this way. If you don't, come and talk to her afterwards. She'll let you know what's up. Oh, okay. So now I'm not just doing this to show you, oh, Mark knows his Old Testament. That's not what this is about. I want all of you to understand and see the line. Okay? To see that there's an end game to this. It started in Genesis chapter 1 and it leads up to the Gospels and the person of Jesus. Okay? And hopefully, up to this point, I've been answering the question, why Jesus? At least to this point, we can see how Jesus. Can I get any amens there? So next time, in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about Jesus. And that ought to be a lot of fun.